What's poppin'? Logan Murdock here, Raja Bell there, Howard Beck in the motherfucking cut. We are here the day after a very, very entertaining Sunday of Game 7s. We're going to get to Nuggets-Timberwolves in the aftermath of that, and then Knicks-Pacers in the aftermath of that, and then preview some series and do some mailbag questions. Kermah said he has some really good mailbag questions, so I'm looking forward to that. He better not disappoint the group. Let's start with Nuggets-Timberwolves. I think we're going to look back at this. I always say this. I'm always speaking hyperboles, but I think this is going to be one of the games we look back at years from now in NBA history. Just in terms of just entertainment value, maybe a pendulum shift. If the Timberwolves, who won this game 98-90, if they go on a run, if they end up doing stuff in the future. This was a really consequential game. Anthony Edwards, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 6 of 24 from the field. But still somehow was the story of the game. The offense flowed through him, and you could kind of see me and Raja talk about this all the time, but just how like a star player can not only galvanize a group, but the group take on his identity. You saw that throughout this game. Even with like the guys like Jaden McDaniels and Karl Towns, who had a really, really strong game. And then you even saw it with down the stretch where Naz Reid gets into the mix and plays some really strong minutes down the stretch. I'll start with Raja on this. What did this win show you about the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Well, I mean, it showed me that they've taken another step, which is what you're looking for from a team at this stage, right? Like you want to see them take the next step, which is, in the playoffs, having seemingly lost control of the series and having it slip, kind of that lead slip through your fingers. You were able to kind of regroup, re-energize, keep your head in the game and like compartmentalize for a Game 7 on a very, very stingy home court for the Nuggets. They're the defending champs, and you weren't fazed in the face of any of that. And you could have been. Like a team that wasn't ready to take this next step is fazed by that. Like that, it rattles them that they've given up a 2-0 lead and they're going home. It rattles them, that they have to now go to Game 7, and they weren't. And even down 20 points in the third quarter, they weren't.
In Denver.
In Denver. Like that's a big thing. And so it just shows you that that's a team that's taken the next step. They're resilient. They believe, it's old, it's tried and true. It sounds curmudgeonish, but defense is always going to be there. It will always keep you alive. It gives you the best chance. Like it's great to be able to score the shit out of the ball. But to hang your hat on defense and take pride on that in the court will keep you in games that you seemingly shouldn't be in. And so, I mean, ultimately, I think that's what it says about them. I don't know if I answered it well, but it says a lot that they were able to do that.
How big of a win was this for the franchise, Howard? I mean, I think it was 20 years to the day that the Minnesota Timberwolves, the last time they went to the Western Conference Finals. I believe you covered the last time the Timberwolves were in the Western Conference. Not calling you old or anything.
Fuck you, Logan.
That's what you are.
Thank you, Raja.
Yeah, thank God, Howard. we ain't going to do that. We're not going to come in hot like that.
Raja's got my back, my old creaky back.
But how big of a series is this, old man?
Huge. I mean, you can't overstate this, right? Minnesota, like that franchise since its inception, like I think that's been a really good basketball town and basketball fan base, and they've had some interesting teams, and they had an all-time great in Kevin Garnett, and they never could surround Garnett with the right supporting cast. They struggled mightily, to say the least. And, by the time he wins a championship, it's because they've traded him to Boston, right? So 20 years later, yes, I was at that conference finals. That was Lakers-Wolves. That was my final season covering the Lakers as a beat writer. And that Minnesota Timberwolves team, I don't know, I'll draw a loose analogy to yesterday's Knicks team, but just kind of falling apart at the seams health-wise. Like just couldn't make it to the finish. Like I think, if I'm remembering correctly, like Cassell was banged up, and I can't remember who else, but they just didn't have enough. And that was one of those series where afterward, a lot of people said, not just the Timberwolves, but people in media, like if they'd been at full strength, they might have knocked out the Lakers. Maybe Shaq and Kobe don't go to that finals in 2004 against the Pistons. But it's been a long time, and the franchise is in flux and at the ownership level. They've been through coaches, they've been through GMs, they've been through multiple number one overall picks who were supposed to be saviors. Wiggins was supposed to be the savior, and Towns was supposed to be the savior, and Towns is still there, but he's there as part of an ensemble, and where the leading man now is clearly Anthony Edwards. And that's not a knock on Karl Anthony Towns. I think it's actually admirable that he has kind of figured out how to best utilize his talents without taking on the burden of making the team in his own image or being that guy. Like, not everybody's built for that. You can have the talent, but not of the personality or the leadership qualities necessarily, or just that galvanizing quality. I like, sometimes it's good to have that other guy come in and take that stuff on. And Anthony Edwards is definitely built for it. And then Gobert coming in and doing all the things defensively that Towns for a long time didn't do. Although in this series, to his credit, he's done some of that too. Mm-hmm. So huge on every level. Also, I like when the team that rises in this way, still a young, fairly young team. I like when it follows kind of like the old school script, which is, and our buddy Vinny Goodwill got a really funny response out of Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns last night when he asked about, like, usually, you've got to have some major, heartbreak in the postseason. And they said, Towns was like, we haven't been here in 20 years. What are you talking about? But Vinny's point was, and I agree, usually you go first round out, second round, then out, then conference finals, maybe. These guys had a couple first round outs. And look, to their credit, they did have to go through some of the battles and the scars and all that stuff. But they just kept building, right? The franchise stuck to it. They hired a really smart GM in Tim Connolly to kind of put in some of the finishing touches, including that Gobert trade that they were just drilled for. Absolutely, just everybody killed them for it. And it's looking pretty good right now. They're in the conference finals. They've got a really good and deep team. That depth was a big problem. I want to come back to the depth piece in a minute, but they have just built this out really well.
You could get back to the depth argument in a second. I do want to ask you, because even as you're talking about this, and I do want to get back to stuff that's on the floor, but off the floor, obviously the Nuggets are, off the floor, the Timberwolves are in a bit of a flux as well. It was so funny just to see the immediate aftermath of the Game 7 win, because one of the first things that Anthony Edwards does is jumps in the arms of Alex Rodriguez. And which was interesting considering the turmoil that's going on with the transition of ownership or lack thereof with Glenn Taylor. And then then on top of that element, you spoke about Connolly, and he's getting pursued or going to get pursued by other teams for their openings. The Pistons
Detroit
are a notable. Yeah. Detroit is one of the notable people. How do they balance how great that they are in this season when the future seems a bit murky as well? I think it's not talked about a lot, but this does seem like, I guess like at face value, you think that the Timberwolves, they're on house money, they're arriving, but if you take a look back at, and peel back the layers of what's going on in the front office and in the ownership box, this seems like this needs to get done right now. This run needs to bear fruit right now. How do you feel about that, Howard? And where do you think the Timberwolves are in terms of franchise stability behind the scenes as they're winning and ascending?
I mean, that winning scene, the A-Rod piece of it notwithstanding, that winning scene is a large part of why Glenn Taylor is still holding on to this team and is trying to throttle a deal that he made with Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry, right? Like, he said it outright, I think, to John Krasinski of The Athletic, where Taylor in an interview like a month ago said, he said a bunch of things, but not least of which was he's really happy with the fact that they're finally here and it's been a long time and he wants to be here for when they finally arrive. And yesterday was one of those moments. they still got to win a conference finals against a really tough Dallas Mavericks team. But clearly Glenn Taylor wants to hang on in case they actually win a championship because he's been there through all the bad times. He's one of the causes of all the bad times because, frankly, he hasn't been a very good owner. So all of that is kind of lingering in the background. I think it's going to be arbitration or whatever that's going to settle this dispute over the sale of the team and control of the team. But Anthony Edwards seeking out A-Rod, like you could just see, like these guys are ready. I think these guys are probably ready to turn the page. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but
I will. I'll put words in your mouth. Anthony Edwards didn't fucking seek out A-Rod. Let's be frank. A-Rod fucking sought out Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, he did.
We all saw that.
He did. He pushed 3 motherfuckers out the way to go be like, hey,
that did not go down like that.
I do think fair. I do think so. All the evidence is that like Tim Connolly, who was a great hire and not a very Timberwolves kind of hire, right? Going out and getting the established and expensive top GM, that was an Alex Rodriguez and a Mark Lowry move. That was not a Glenn Taylor move. And so this team that is now starting to break through, it's just like you could just see like this is a new era on every level. And I got no skin in the game, but like I'd be curious to see how this ownership battle plays out. But it seemed like a healthy thing for the Minnesota Timberwolves that Glenn Taylor was not going to be the owner anymore. And if you ask any of their fans, by the way, like they're furious that Glenn Taylor's holding on to this thing. So we don't need to dwell on all the palace intrigue stuff, but like that stuff is all lingering back there. It's going to be hilarious if they win the championship. To see like
who gets the trophy.
Well, Taylor clearly will, but like Lowry and Alex Rodriguez might be like, fighting through security to get up on the stage.
I don't know about fans, but players don't give a shit about none of that. We don't care. Like we don't.
Yeah.
It done. I mean, we could talk about that in the offseason. We can get into like, who we like better. But right now, to the original thing you asked, Logan, and sorry for like interjecting like that, but like you can't care. That's not on your radar. You're playing basketball, whether it's A-Rod writing a check, Glenn Taylor writing a check, whoever's sitting courtside, it's irrelevant. You know what I mean? Like, and you close ranks the deeper and deeper you get into a season in a way that really shields you from any of that bullshit. Like you just don't have the time, the bandwidth. Things are, there's too much at stake at this point to really concern yourself with any of that.
All of that being true, Raja, Kevin Garnett cares who the owner is there. And has for a long time. And that's why Kevin Garnett is not part of that organization, doesn't have a statue, has not had any participation with them since his retirement. It's because of Glenn Taylor. So like, I agree. I understand in the moment. It's just about the basketball. No player.
That motherfucker's a media member like me now. He's not a player.
I'm saying the bad feelings between Garnett from his playing days toward Glenn Taylor run really deep and really intense. And so like, you're right, of course, and you know this better than I do. But at the same time, if you were the franchise star and you had a team where they kept just like fucking up left and right, or wouldn't spend, or things are always volatile in the front office, like you do feel that because it hurts your career. So, that's undisputable and undeniable. But in the midst of right now on the court with those guys. Ant Edwards, Cat, like it just can't be a concern. It couldn't be and then be as successful as they've been.
I think it's a great segue to get back onto the court. And I wanted to ask, like one of the things that me and Rob Mahoney talked about when I was on the pod, when we did I think it was a live show, Ringer NBA pod a week ago. And I was really curious to see how, when the chips are down, how Anthony Edwards manages a game, right? And how he, and we've seen a little bit of that, when in the elimination game against the Phoenix Suns, but it was just sheer dominance from Anthony Edwards. And I think I wanted to see how he would play when he's not playing well, when his shot isn't going well, and when he's not as aggressive. And I think that third quarter was just such it was such a breakthrough, not only for the Timberwolves, but for Anthony Edwards. I think he had like 9 points in that third quarter, and it kind of galvanized the rest of the team. What did you think of just how he managed the game, and how What did you think of this, the totality of his game yesterday? Where, I mean, you look at the stats, he didn't shoot the ball very well, but he did get timely steals. He got that steal on Jamal Murray. I think it was a tie to game in the third quarter, was really big. He's constantly like in his teammates' ear talking about, hey, we need this one stop. He's pointing out things right here. It felt like it was a bit more of a cerebral approach to winning the game, as opposed to I have to score every time, like you saw in spurts during this series and in large times during the Phoenix series. But how did you feel like he managed the game and managed his teammates as he was struggling on Sunday, Rob?
Well, I thought, well, first of all, he managed his game. Mike Conley manages their game, but I understand what you're saying. And he was a perfect example, of what I would use as an example to my son Ty, who's a young basketball player, of you can affect the game in so many ways that if by chance offense isn't working, that shouldn't be your only value to the team in a winning capacity. And Ant checked all the boxes that you would want a leader to check and a competitor to check. First of all, we're not having the conversation about him shooting 6 shots because it wasn't going in or they were double teaming him. We have that conversation sometimes. You can't do that. You have to play through it. You have to work through it. And even if it doesn't work out to where you're scoring 27 on a bad night, what he finished with, like 16 or 17, like those nine were critical. And it just displays to the rest of the team that he's with us. Like he's competing. The communication, the constant reminding of teammates that we're not out of this. Like, guys, we're still here. We're still fighting. There are other guys that have that on a team that you don't have to supply them with that type of energy. They have it organically. But there are people on the team that are going to look to you for that, just to make sure that you still believe, right? And if it's absent and you're not doing that as the leader, in a game like last night, you don't win that. Right? Like, I like what he said after the game about, hey man, if my offense isn't working, like, I'm going to take your best player and I'm going to lock him down. Like, he referenced like Jamal in the third quarter after what he did in the first half, and Ant telling you, like, I'm locked that down. Yeah. So, like, again, I reference a lot of it back. I spent my whole weekend in a youth, in a high level youth basketball, and you can affect the game in so many ways that if you're not scoring for one reason or the other, albeit a double team, or it's just not going in the basket, or someone else is getting the majority of the shots, there are so many more things that you can do for a team to win the game. And I thought he was a shining example of that last night. Like, there was a time years ago where we talked, and I talked about a lack of maturity that I had perceived maybe at press conferences and whatnot. I'll still stand on that from the time, but man, who he is now when he gets in front of a mic, what he's talking about, either in a win or a loss, the way he comported himself last night in a game 7, I just thought it was fantastic, man. It was exactly what I would tell my sons or anybody that wanted advice from me. That's how you act.
It reminded me, Raja, honestly of like old championship Kobe in a way. And I'll take this I think about the 2000 Lakers, because 2001, I think Kobe just kind of like found his dominance. But what reminded me of Ant and young Kobe, and just space, and I think it's more of the teams than the actual two players. Like when Kobe was winning his first 2 titles, first 3 titles, he could be the person that, if he's not scoring, could just lock somebody down and doesn't have to necessarily, he doesn't have to manage the game. He has the Derek Fisher to be able to do that. You saw that with Mike Conley. Or he has the Glenn Rice over here, right? Or he has the Robert Horry over here. And then he can focus on his defense or getting his shots when he needed to, right? Or he also had Shaq, which was, the most dominant force at the time. But more of the comparison is that he had veterans around him that could supplement the game managing role that he needs to do. And I think when we were talking about, me and Rob were talking about Luka versus Ant right now, and I think Rob asked me who I thought was better in this moment. I said, I think that Luka is better in this moment because he can manage the game in that way, right? He's a one-man game manager while being the superstar. But I saw with Anthony Edwards, what I want to ask you, Raj, is how important, at least in the role that Anthony Edwards occupies at this moment. Now, I hope that he does get to that role of in his 8th or 9th year to where you can run offense through him and trust him to be able to do some of the things he could. Mike Conley's not going to be there in his year 8. But right now, how important is it right now for Anthony Edwards and his trajectory to have those veteran presence around him and have those other guys that can do things when his shot isn't necessarily falling? And, maybe he's taking because he was taking some wild shots yesterday. Yeah. How important is it to have those other guys that can manage the game on his behalf until he gets going?
It's huge on any team. I would just like to take it back. I think I would make the argument that while, yes, it's important for both a young Kobe and a young Ant to have those veterans and calming influences and guys who have been in these situations before. We speak about that with any good team. There's got to be a good blend and mix of stardom, fresh legs, veteran leadership and experience. All of that goes into the pot when you're trying to win a championship. I would argue that Ant is more of a connector than Kobe was.
Sure.
Kobe was kind of insular. When he was younger trying to break through. I think Ant, you see him connecting, he's leading more than a young Kobe probably did with a Shaq. I don't think it was necessarily a Kobe issue, but you did have Shaq and some of those guys there that were the faces and the leaders. And in terms of the importance to Ant, it's huge, but it's huge for any of them. And in terms of game management itself, Luka plays a way that's going to lend itself to managing games. He got the fucking ball all the time.
Yeah.
It's just he's got the ball. You better manage the fucking game. You dribble. You got it all the time. Ant's game isn't always like that. Now he could get, as he continues to evolve, he becomes the guy who has it all the time. But I don't know that I want him as the guy that has it all the time. They get him into pick and roll. He creates. He does his things. He'll continue to grow. I think Luka does have a better understanding of how all the chess pieces move when he does X, Y, and Z. But it's because he does X, Y, and Z, and he's got a catalog of years worth of experience with that. Ant's still going to grow.
14.
Yeah, Ant's still going to grow into that. So, but it's huge for him to have guys like that. But everyone needs a supporting cast, right, Logan? We can't just throw it on the back of one of these young stars, Luka included.
Yeah.
It's taken the right ensemble cast around him, to kind of let those brilliances in his game kind of continue to propel them to the next level of the playoff run.
Sure. Howard, I want to talk Nuggets really quickly. We talked in our last podcast just about what would happen and what would be, how would the Nuggets move forward if they lose Game 7? Now we're on the other side of that, and we can actually have a conversation of what they have to do or what they can do and how they'll be looked at. How big of a loss was it for this group in this season when they had by and large the same team. They didn't have Bruce Brown, but they had the other Brown brother, and where do they go from? That was wild. Where do they go from? Where do they go from here in the immediate aftermath of this series?
This is why it should be pronounced Braun, Braun. Then this wouldn't happen.
Apologies.
It's interesting. If you watched Michael Malone's press conference, because you saw the full spectrum of emotions and various entry points as to what had just happened and what it all means for him as the coach of this team. And one of the interesting things that Malone made a point of saying was, listen, the Spurs were a dynasty and the Spurs never won back-to-back, meaning we still have a lot of lifespan left. And I agree with him. The fact is nobody has defended their championship since the Warriors in 2017 and 18. It's been 6 years since we've had back-to-back. In fact, more than that, just some context for the Nuggets, quote unquote, failing to get back to the championship. No defending champion has even made it back to the finals the next season since the Warriors in 2019 after winning the 2 championships and then trying to three-peat and getting hurt and losing to Toronto. So everybody, like, they're winning and then they're flaming out. You know, the Lakers in 2020 couldn't get anywhere near the finals the next season. The Bucks win in 2021, couldn't get anywhere near. The Warriors win in 22, couldn't get anywhere near. And now the Nuggets, like, this is just where we are. It's the 6th straight year, I believe, that a defending champion hasn't even gotten past the second round. And it's just, this is where we are. If we're going to talk about parity and how wonderful and amazing and interesting it is, then when a team like the Nuggets falters, we have to remember that, yes, things are just this close now. To your point, Logan, all right, they had their starting 5 intact, but depth matters. And having a serviceable 6th and 7th man who are reliable and can produce does matter. They lost Bruce Brown and
5
Jeff
points
Green
from their bench last night.
Yeah. Not only that, but like, look at like the Timberwolves. So Slow-Mo only played 4 minutes, but Naz Reid 22 minutes, Nickeil Alexander-Walker 17 minutes. The Nuggets bench at Game 7 when they, when they're all gassed, and they said it afterward, they were gassed. Christian Brown with an AUN played 20 minutes, but like Justin Holiday 9 and Reggie Jackson 5, like they just didn't even try to use the bench because obviously Michael Malone didn't trust that he had anybody on that bench who could do anything for them. To which I want to just point out this one other thing, which was that toward the end of his press conference, when he was asked about just the exhaustion of trying to defend a championship, Michael Malone says, we played into June last year. And then he says, we had to play our main guys, unlike last season, through Game 82 just to secure the number 2 seed. The amount of minutes our starters had to play, I think guys are gassed, they're dead tired. I don't want to go too far with this, and I'm not trying to start shit, but like, that's a little bit of a low-key shot, I think, at the front office, where they did not have the bench support. And it's hard, and I'm not blaming the front office necessarily. I'm just pointing out, like, if you say that we had to play our starters that much through Game 82 and now they're gassed, you're basically saying you did not have a bench you could trust or that was good enough. And look, like the fact is, like, nobody on that bench was as good as the 2 guys they lost last season. So it's all part of this, and that's part of what they have to address in the offseason. But I just want to underscore, since I made this point at the beginning of the season, this is why you don't declare a team a potential dynasty after only 1 championship.
No doubt. I would just add, I mean, not only did you only have 5 in the limited minutes from the bench, but you only had 16 outside of Jokic and Jamal Murray from the 3 other starters. Like that, you're not going to win games very often like that. You had 21 points outside of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Like, that's not going to get it done.
Well, I mean, Aaron Gordon, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists in 42 minutes.
What was the phrase I kept using, guys? Margin for error. They have a smaller margin for error than your typical champion because if Jokic and Murray aren't at their best, and especially Jokic, there's just not a lot there. Yes, Aaron Gordon can have a great game here and there, and it is a really good player and an important player. Michael Porter Jr., same thing. KCP, same thing. But nobody else who can really carry you. This is Jokic and an ensemble, and the margin for error is slim.
So this is interesting, right? And it won't matter again the rest of the season. But like when I'm not on this pod, it's been asked on this pod before. But when people would ask me to come on their local radio show and stuff, and they ask me about the Nuggets, how do you defend them? That's the blueprint that I would always go with. Now, the Nuggets make it almost impossible on a nightly basis to do that to him or to do that to them. But I would pencil in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray for 30 apiece. And if I could stymie the rest of that roster, that's what I'm doing. Do you know? And it's easier said than done. I know but if they don't get to the support, just for that very reason, if they're not going to get the support, I mean, even if Nikola has 50 and Jamal has 35, it's not beating you if the rest of them are getting 4 points a pop.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with their depth. It's always the margin of error between two, if you win or lose, right? Like, what's Aaron Gordon's future? How are they going to pay for this team that does not have a bench that gives you 5 points in a game 7 going forward? It's going to be interesting. Let's look ahead really quickly. I think this is going to be. We knew Nuggets Timberwolves was going to be entertaining. I think Mavericks Timberwolves is also going to be entertaining. I know you guys don't like predictions, but hey, Howard, we got to do one today. Just listen. This is just how it goes. We're predicting series. I'll start with Howard. How do you see this series going? Like, what excites you about it? And then ultimately, what's going to happen?
Timberwolves have hung their hat on defense, as Raja was talking about earlier, and one of the things that's great about Anthony Edwards as a young star in this league, who most people will focus on because of his scoring, but also just the way he scores and how exciting he is and how much fun it is to watch him score and his creativity and his explosiveness and all that. There's this hallway interview yesterday where he talks about locking up. He says, I had Jamal in handcuffs, Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray had 11 points on 12 shots in the second half. I love that Anthony Edwards takes pride in that. And I think it was in the post-game on the court interview with TNT where he was talking about, I'm going to have Kyrie in the next series. He's already talking about, what his assignment is. That's cool. I love that. So the first thing I'm thinking about is, Anthony Edwards trying to take Kyrie, one of the greatest, most creative and skilled scorers we've seen, trying to take him out.
The biggest test of his young career, probably, if not the biggest test, as a one-on-one assignment.
And they're going to want him to still score 25, 30 at the other end. So that's a lot. But I love that the first thing he's talking about is I got to go check Kyrie now. And then what do you do with Luka if you're the Wolves? Now they've got a lot of ways to attack this. I assume McDaniels is going to spend a lot of time on him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. There's no stopping Luka Doncic. And, even if you're slowing him up as a scorer, he's going to get his guys involved. That's what he does. He's going to have the ball in his hands 99% of the time. And the Mavericks are really dangerous, but the Mavericks have gotten a lot of mileage out of that new front line. And I don't know that front line is built to deal with Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. Curious to see what Raja thinks of it. But I think the Wolves have the advantage on, there's the obvious. They've got home court advantage in the series. As far as the Mavericks defense has come in recent months, the Timberwolves have the better, more consistent defense. They've got size. I'll leave whatever dumb predictions we have to make until later.
Hey, that was a lot of talk to dodge.
I'm not dodging. I'm just saying
a lot of words.
Logan's going to ask us at some point to say, okay, what do you think? Who's winning? How many games?
That was me. How do you see the series playing out?
Wolves
What is your
in 7. Fine. Wolves in 7.
Thank you. Jesus. That's the only time it's going to happen until the finals. Howard, relax. I learned my lesson. All right? Jeez.
Predictions.
What do you say?
I was going to ask you Raja, what did you think of because the Dallas's defense has been its calling card for the last part of the season. It's since February, since they made that trade to get Gafford. I don't know the numbers, but I know that they've been really good since they made that trade. And Lively, while being a rookie, has played really, really well as a big throughout the postseason.
Yeah,
but you don't see that defense standing a chance against this Timberwolves team.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I don't know that I wouldn't phrase it as I don't see that defense standing a chance against Minnesota. I think that the Mavs defense will show up to play. I just think Milwaukee's a better defensive team.
Minnesota.
Sorry, Minnesota. Yeah, I think Minnesota's a better defensive team. They've done it for longer. They've hung their hat on that for a couple years now. And I think what's hard to quantify for the average fan watching on TV, you guys get to go to those games and you get really close to the action so you can see just how big those dudes are.
Yeah.
Minnesota is big. They are
long.
A
huge human being, bro.
They're long.
Just tall, big motherfucker.
Yeah,
man.
and so they pose problems defensively that quite frankly not everybody poses to a really good offensive team. Now, on the flip side, I was coming into these playoffs liking Dallas a little bit because if you remember, I'm like, look, in the playoffs, it sometimes it comes down to, do you have a dude that's better than the other guy's dude that can get the buckets
and
when we're facing? They have two. So I like it. I like the series. I think it'll be really entertaining. I too am going to pick Minnesota to win it. I just think that because of the way they defend, it makes it that much harder for the Kyrie and the Luka to have those games over and over and over again consistently enough for them to beat them. So I like 7. I wouldn't be mad if you told me 6. I think Milwaukee, Minnesota wears on them eventually and finds a way to win it.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting series. It took everything, and I know that we just saw how much it took for the Timberwolves to win in 7 games, but it took a lot for the Dallas Mavericks to get out of the OKC series. I was really, really impressed with OKC. I really think that they have a really bright future. I love Shea, just how calm, cool, and collected he is at all times. Did you see the shots that he hit in Game 7, man? Just ridiculous. Man. Okay, I'm gonna take the Timberwolves in 7. I don't have the heart to say that the Dallas Mavericks are going to win, even though I love them a lot. All right, let's take a quick break. Briefly talk Knicks, Pacers, and some mailbags. All right, and we are back. Man, what a series Knicks Pacers was. It was really anticlimactic with the Game 7, though. Like it was a tough. The Knicks couldn't get to the finish line or get to the finish line. Tom Thibodeau got scorned on the timeline. It was an interesting. I'm gonna start with Howard before we get to Tyrese Haliburton and
the expression on Raj's face tells me he needs to.
What's he supposed to do? What's he supposed to do? What's Tom Thibodeau supposed to do?
That's what I said. And me and Howard talked about it last episode. It just basically like this is just more of a reputational thing. Like we just talked about how that Mike Malone played all his guys 40 minutes. What you do in the playoffs? That's what happens.
I mean, especially when you're down bodies to the degree that the Knicks are down bodies.
There were 2 injuries from calling you, Raja.
Or John Starks.
I'll just say this: like there's the whole Thibs minutes, everything else discussion has gotten so ridiculous at both ends, by the way. A lot of the Knicks injuries this season were not overuse injuries. They were just shit that happened. Somebody breaks a wrist or has something go wrong. Like if it's your arm, I'm sorry, that's not an overuse injury unless it's because you were shooting 50 times a night. Right. There is a legitimate discussion to be had about load management, fatigue, and its effect on injury, cause and effect, medical people who have far better knowledge and understanding of these things that any of us idiots out in the punditry world have. But it's you can't blame all the Knicks injuries on fatigue, overuse, minutes, nor can you completely absolve Thibs of the fact that he does play his guys a lot, because when you are fatigued, the medical people will tell you, yes, it does leave you potentially more prone to certain kinds of injuries. Not all of the Knicks injuries fit that. So that's the important caveat. But also, like, if you've played your guys a ton of minutes and the other team has been because they're deeper or whatever, or have managed minutes better, then your team might be the one that's more tired and more vulnerable to just losing. So like there's a legitimate discussion to be had, but it's so stupidly overheated at both extremes that I don't even, this is about as much as I ever want to say about it. Cause it's become annoying. I think what's more interesting for me would be how do they practice at this point compared to other NBA teams? Right, the usage, teams don't practice anymore, Roger. Well, no, I mean, the last time I was around an NBA team was the Cavs, and we barely did any work. But like some of those guys, like Thibs, not only is it that they will play you the minutes, but it's that their practices at times. And so if he's still holding on to some of that, which I don't know, where your workload is what it is during a game, and then on off days you're working still, like. Now I can start having a conversation a little bit more in regards to it, but like, I mean, I don't know, man. Look, I had one calf injury that you could say was maybe an overuse injury. We were playing a lot of minutes. It was the 2006 playoffs. We just didn't have enough bodies. I think I was the only one on the roster with Mike, because Mike caught a lot of flack for playing guys a lot too and not going deep into his bench. I'm paid to play basketball. I want to play basketball. Like, at some point when you're in those heated series, and I'm not going to argue for him or not, but like a coach will look at you and be like, hey man, this isn't between medical. Like that was during the season, like the maintenance plan is during the season. We're in the playoffs, man. We're trying to win a game. What's up? You want to play?
And I'm going to look at you I would imagine 99.9% of dudes in the league are going to look at you and be like, I'm good. Now, yeah, I guess there's an argument to be had that you got to protect somebody from themselves. But I mean, listen, man, we're paid to hoop. We're paid to try to go out there and win. Like that's the name of the game. I don't get into all of that with the Thibs overusing people.
Beck, how will this Knicks team be remembered? Let's pour out some liquor for the Knicks.
They'll be remembered for being inspirational, amazing, gutty, fun, unlikely, like all these things. I don't think I have not been outside today. But so I have not talked to any of my fans who are my friends who are Knicks fans, Knicks fan friends. I can't imagine people are feeling too bad about this. Like it sucks. Obviously, they were on the verge of making their first conference final since 2000. It's been a long, long time for this team and its fans in this city. But, that team was spent. And the fact is that they got here at all was part of what was fun about them. Oh, bodies go down. Guys, Brunson's foot's messed up. This thing happens. That thing happens. And they just keep going. And Josh Hart, plays his ass off and he gets an abdominal strain and he just keeps going. And like Isaiah Hartenstein grabs like 99% of all offensive rebounds, according to my calculations. Like it's like they're incredible. I think in a lot of ways they probably overachieved. It's when you consider that they had one star standing at the end in Brunson because Julius Randle was lost months ago. And there's room to build. Like Jalen Brunson's just at the beginning of this journey, right? Like he just now broke into stardom. He's young. He's going to be around for a long time to come with this team. And I don't know that you can replicate the heart and hustle version every single year because I do think it takes a toll. But having that as the base character and identity of your team gets you so far along, so much of the way. And then, if you want to say, well, they really need a better co-star, or maybe, we don't trust Randle, or maybe Randle comes back and that's enough. But well, guess what? They're now the kind of team that guys are going to want to play for. And I get it. Like the athletic survey of players has Thibs as the coach who everybody says they don't want to play for. But there are plenty of players in the league who are not afraid of that type of program. And guys are going to want to play with Jalen Brunson because he's selfless. And guys are going to want to play for a team where everybody just moves the ball and plays for each other and have this kind of support from the fan base. Like, I think the Knicks are in a much better place.
I was just so disgusted that somebody doesn't want to play.
That's soft shit. I don't want to play for somebody because he fuck out of here, man.
I don't want to play for somebody because he runs me, because he puts me on the court too much.
Raj, it's like 3 years running this
honest to God, man. I would tell somebody if I was in a locker room and somebody said that shit to me, man, I call them all kind of right to their face. That's soft as hell. Play with for somebody because he works too hard.
But we agree, right?
Raj is open for freelance opportunities just to do surveys like this.
Straight up.
No, he's the guy you hire to come in and then curse out all the guys who are too soft, right?
Soft.
But there's plenty of guys who will want to play for them. And so I think they're in great shape. They've kept all their draft picks. They've got, optionality, as we like to call it these days. They can keep building on this. Like they're not going anywhere. And so I don't think Knicks fans should be like, it sucks. But like, I think by and large, probably most of them clear-headed look at the season and think that was a really fun ride. And I love that this team is actually back, is respectable, and it's really easy to root for. I'll tell you one other thing. I can't remember if I brought this up last week, Logan, but like there's a lot of DNA from the 90s Knicks to this Knicks team, right? Just, a lot of, heart, hustle, grit, all that stuff. But that Knicks team in the 90s was a team like only New Yorkers could love. And like, this is a team that I think people all over the country were actually kind of, falling for because they were so much fun. And they didn't have all the other nastiness of like the 90s Knicks who just beat the shit out of you too, right? But it was a different time. Yeah. Like that was the league then.
It was a charismatic ass whooping that this year's Knicks did. It was a lot more charisma with this ass whooping. It was kicking ass.
It was a 2020 ass kick. It was what the league wants. It's what it was
a palatable ass whooping.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with everything. I would agree with everything Howard said. I would just add that what they have, first of all, back to Thibs and what he does. One of the only coaches that could withstand all of what happened to them in terms of injuries this year and have a team overachieve in the way they did because of the way they play and their DNA. right? So because he coaches like that, because he demands like he does, that's why they look like that when they're out there on the court, and they're able to overcome all of these injuries and lack of, depth and stardom and whatnot, because they play a certain way. When that is who you are, that is so much harder to develop than it is to go out and acquire pieces that can put the ball in the hole, if that makes sense. So having that in place, established identity, culture, that's the hard part. Going out to find guys that can fit into that once you've already tantalized them with what you could be, I think is the easier part. So especially if you have all the things that Howard said they have in terms of their books, the money and assets to maneuver. I think you're able to add to that relatively easily. And if he's too soft to want to play for Thibs, you don't want him anyway.
Fuck out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You don't deserve these Timbs. Or this Averex jacket. It's heavy.
Averex, wow.
Little fucking vibes.
Mm.
Sorry, I got a little too ahead of myself. I'm one of the guys that fuck with this.
I used to like my
Averex.
Did
you got a little Averex, huh?
I had multiple Averexes and Rockawairs, and we were those were the days.
You know what I mean? The Ghostface Killer starter pack. Yeah. Let's go.
And the Nietzsche Velour. What was out there?
It was a little too warm on the West Coast to be wearing all that shit, but I did get it, lugs. I know you motherfuckers on the East Coast was wearing lugs. Howard, again, is just out of it. He's not even he's just sitting. He's just, when we start talking that talk, he just looks around. Let's talk about the Pacers before we get to Mailbag. I wanted to ask you this, Raja. Tyrese Haliburton played his ass off, and I think you've seen just this season and this postseason was an extension of that, just him building into a star in front of our eyes. Right, we've seen that with Anthony Edwards over these last couple of postseasons, but I think it helped that he was doing this at Madison Square Garden. But you saw just the birth of a star. You saw Jadakiss waiting to shake his hand after the game. Right, you seen it felt like an arrival. What version of him do you want to see against Boston, right?
Yeah.
It finally seemed like he saw his shot. He finally got his swagger back, right? What version is needed against Boston? It's going to be a very tall task. I have talked shit about Boston throughout this whole postseason and this season, just not believing their raps, but they are a formidable team. Are going to be overwhelming favorites and should win this series. That being said, you are King Devil's advocate here. What is going to be needed for the Pacers? What chance do the Pacers have going into the series?
I need to see Talladega Nights before the crash, Ricky Bobby. Hey, if you're not first, you're last. We're going fast, baby. I need to see the aggressive, fast, I need to see that version of Haliburton where he's pushing tempo, where he's aggressive looking for his shot, where he's aggressive getting downhill and spraying the ball. It's their only hope against Boston is to just, you got to go. And, we've talked about Boston before as it relates to, who knows? Who knows what shows up at times. So,
they get a swift punch in the mouth. They're like, oh. So,
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I don't know if Indiana had that punch, though.
It was pretty cool to watch him kind of grow up a little bit through that series. That was an interesting, from where he wound up from where he started in game one, and the conversations that we've had in between was pretty cool to watch. But he has to go out and he's got to be the driver of that. He's got to be the engine. He makes it go. He's got to push the tempo. He's got to be aggressive. He's got to have the look in his eye that sets the table and the tone for his locker room, win, lose, or draw.
Are you concerned about? I'll ask the field. How concerned are we about Porzingis' calf injury and how that affects the Boston Celtics? Let's start with Howard. What do you think? Are you scared? This is calf injuries are so tough. Every time I thought about KD's calf injury in 2019, that's something that's just always lingering. Every time you hear calf injury right now, especially in the postseason, but this is tough. He hasn't been back. He hasn't been playing since Game 5 against Miami. So, how big is this going forward?
I mean, you can't say it doesn't matter, considering that a lot of what we talked about from the moment they got him, and certainly once we saw how well he fit with them during the course of the season, it was all about these guys have not just the best starting five, but the best, 1 through 6 in the league. And look what Porzingis does for them in terms of they can play 5 out, and they've got a shot blocker, and they've got a guy who, for a guy his size has, a little bit of mobility. I'm not saying you want him out there guarding point guards, but like there's a lot you can do with Porzingis. And if he's not there, or if he's limited, you can't say it doesn't mean anything. That said, Al Horford has played in a lot of playoff games,
37
and a lot of conference
years old.
finals. How old?
30. He is 2 years older than you, Howard.
Impossible. No, I mean, look, he's got a lot of miles on him, but like Al Horford's still a really good player. And yeah, they're going to have to kind of like patch it up, play small at times,
Luke Cornett getting some minutes.
The Cornett contest will be in full effect. They'll find a way. Like I don't think that this series is turning necessarily on Porzingis' availability. I think the Celtics are good enough and obviously have all the experience advantage in the world, right? Like, I wonder too, like Raja, you tell me, because I thought about this a lot during the course of this Knicks-Pacers series, right? I covered all the games at the Garden. Haliburton, turns in like an absolute clunker in game 1, says, I'll have a great game 2. He does. And then the next 3 games, he was great. And then he turns into clunker in game 5 and he's getting, killed again for just, fading at the wrong time, and comes back and leads them to wins the next 2 games and has an outstanding, legendary game 7. And so there's a lot of growing up that's already happened, like right before our eyes with Haliburton and other young guys on that team. Obviously, Siakam's won a championship with Toronto. And, Miles Turner and TJ McConnell are a little older, but most of their guys are like 24 and under. How much is it actually going to come into play? Like by the time you get to the conference finals, should we in the media still be talking about the experience deficit? Does it still matter? The Celtics are in their 6th conference finals and the Pacers are in their 1st. So.
Yeah. I think it still matters. I don't know that it matters as much just organically, right? Like they've experienced a few things now. Like they've been in a game 7 on the road and had to win that. So they're accumulating experience. But I do think that the stakes, you can feel the stakes rise in a locker room, right? Like we're aware of the situation and how close we are to getting to the end goal, which is the finals. And as the games mount in a Western Conference or Eastern Conference final, the pressure does as well. And if you've experienced it more than another team, you're going to have an advantage. So I do think it's a thing, Howard, but it becomes less and less of a thing as the team that's young and lacks it accumulates it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That being said, before we get to predictions, you guys can listen to group chat. They went really deep into this series and looking ahead. So let's go with it. Let's do it. What is your prediction, Raja? And then we'll go to Howard.
I have Boston in 6.
Ooh, 6, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. You got Howard.
I agree. I think it's Celtics in 6. I think if Porzingis comes back, it maybe tips it even further, but I have too much respect for what I just saw the Pacers do to call this a 5 or less series. Yep. And they've just like the confidence that you have to have. It's not just a game 7. It was a game 7 at Madison Square Garden. That place is nuts. And a place where, again, Haliburton in particular had a couple of real clunkers and the Pacers had not won. So after that, I just don't think and Boston's nuts too, right? Like that arena is ear splitting.
It's fucking ridiculous.
What's interesting about them, I feel this way kind of about the T-Wolves too, because Denver can be crazy. You see a look in a team's eyes that like you saw in the Pacers' eyes yesterday. You could make an argument that Boston crowd is fuel for them.
Yeah.
Do you know? Like it's a weird thing. It's all personality driven.
How big is game
like who
1
you have
in a
in the locker
series
room.
like this, though, Ra? How big is game 1 in a series like this?
Oh man, game one is a monster game because, I mean, if you get it, you're playing with house money. If you get it and you're the road team, it's house money now. Like the pressure is is gone, at least for a minute, right? So like it's just a huge game. One's a huge game.
I almost think that we need to see just a fucking dominant performance from Boston at home, like just to set the tone for this whole entire series. That's what I want to see from them.
Well, because that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. No, just like it's so much of this is going to be about in terms of the speculation or predictions about the series is so much about like, does anybody actually trust Boston? Because
I don't trust Boston, and I'm on record saying I don't trust Boston.
Yeah, and that
years
in theory opens the door. I would just say it on pure
Stop laughing,
basketball. Putting aside Boston's like various pratfalls or like giving a game away in the middle of a series weirdly, and just having those moments where they just don't show up or revert to old bad habits. Like the best player on the Indiana Pacers, granted he's got some size to him and everything else, so he's not your typical point guard that you could just go bottle up. But Tyrese Haliburton, everything's going to rise and fall with him. And here the Celtics are with Drew Holiday, who's going to give up a few inches, but like Drew Holiday, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Derek White, who's got some size, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Brown and Tatum, both very good defenders and have height and length and everything else. Like, it's the same thing as I would have said if this had been the Knicks right now. And it's like, if you can just, bottle up Brunson, you're on your way. That's a lot of guys with a lot of capability who are, some of the best defensive players in the league to go mess with Tyrese Haliburton. So this is going to be the biggest test he's faced, obviously. Yeah.
I got Celtics in 6, but I want to see just a dominant, like, get the fuck out of here performance, right? Like, it's probably going to be Boston in 6, but I kind of want it to be Boston in 5. And that's, you know what I mean? I just want them to just be like, fuck out of here. Let's get our rest. We're supposed to be here. We're supposed to get to the finals. Get the fuck out of here. Like, stop. So I'll say Boston in 6. Kerm. Let's bring Kerm in here for our motherfucking mailbag. Kerm, do you trust the Boston Celtics?
Do I trust the Celtics?
Just say no.
You're asking this of a Laker fan.
Literally
from New England, by the way.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I'm going to just say no. I'm going to just say no.
Okay.
My problem is I don't know if there's enough I don't know if the Pacers are scary enough for them to be the ones to top them, but whatever. Let's get into the mailbag.
Who were you worried about being politically correct for there? Because I felt like you were.
You're in LA. Ain't nobody going to check you, bro. Like, you're fine. Ain't nobody going to check you. You're far from Dorchester.
I'm sleep deprived. I needed a second to process. Let's get to the mailbag.
Dorchester.
First question is from World Historical. Didn't have a real name in the email, but it's a good question. What would happen if you put Sabonis on the Nuggets and Jokic on the Kings? So we're just swapping out the European white dudes. What you guys think?
The Kings would be a perennial 50-win team, and they would be out of the play-in, and the Nuggets will be in the play-in at best.
Pretty much just like that. Yep.
Yeah. I thought we were gonna get some more nuance there. My bad, guys. Next question.
I mean, one is significantly better than the other, right? Like, was he intimating that they were?
One will get punked in the play-in, and one won't get punked in the play-in.
I will just say, if you want to like branch it out a little bit further, because there's the obvious.
Howard.
Jokic is a 3-time MVP. Sabonis is not. But like the Nuggets also just had a better arrangement of guys around him. So like, whatever you think of De'Aaron Fox and the rest of the gang there, like, it's just not as good of a team anyway. So,
thank you, Howard. Appreciate it. Next,
you can just cut that part out. You guys pretty well summed it up before.
I bet every word I
just wanted to add. I don't know.
We aim to
please. That was actually a good point, Howard. I appreciated the attempt to stretch the question out.
Keep on
it's not just the fact that Jokic is better. Like, the Nuggets are better.
Thank you. I thought that discussion would have came.
It's mostly Jokic. It's mostly Jokic is better.
It's mostly Jokic.
Yes, but I would agree that the Nuggets have a better supporting cast, but Jokic is better.
Yeah, yet another reminder who the Kings passed on in the draft.
Herter and Harrison Barnes, or KCP and Gordon. Raja.
I'm not arguing.
All right.
Not arguing. I would
give Malik Monk no love. That's crazy.
I would just argue
He's better than Christian Brown.
the difference between those two isn't as significant a gap as the difference between Sabonis and Jokic.
Fine.
So,
Yeah.
All right.
We spent way too much time on this question.
We don't even talk about Sacramento.
We were out of there. We were out, Howard. We were out of the question.
Howard
you literally drug us back into it.
Kerm, next question.
You could have just done that.
All right. Next question is from, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Kajeton, Kajeton. Greetings from real listener from Poland. Love the pod vibes. We worldwide, we global. You feel me?
You got the fucking vibes. Shout out to Poland. I got the fucking Poland.
Hit it,
All right,
hit
go
it,
ahead.
hit it.
Sorry, my bad.
My question is related to recently announced Vince Carter jersey retirement by the Nets. VC was always my favorite player. I started watching the NBA in 2004 when he was still on the Raptors. Should Toronto consider his jersey retirement? His success with the Raptors was controversial. Conference finals, conference semis against Philly back in 2001, but the impact he had on Canadian basketball is out the question. And should this be considered as a jersey retirement?
Absolutely. What? Like, you ask anybody who was you just referenced it in the question. You ask anybody that is even remotely around Canadian basketball, that's around my age. I've talked to Andrew Wiggins about this. You talked to Shea about this. Like, what he did, not only in the semifinals, but I would say, it's not even an argument. The dunk contest that he had in Oakland had a huge impact on Canadian basketball and putting Canadian basketball on the map. The fact that it's took this long says a lot. He should have had his jersey retired by that organization. I don't care what happened. You figure that out. Everybody got bullshit that they deal with their stars. You do the right thing and you retire his jersey.
I don't have anything to add to that. Sorry, but that's pretty succinct and to the point. Yes, his for all of those reasons.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not extending this conversation.
They gave Drake a practice facility before they fucking retired Vince Carter's jersey. Go ahead, Kermah.
Right.
Sorry. Don't remember.
Last question.
Keep that in too.
Last question is from Brenham. He's from Australia. I'm not doing a whole accent. I don't think I can hold that up for the entire time, but I'm going to say, good day, Logan, Raja, and what up, Beck? Beck. Boz from Perth, Australia. Big fan.
Shout out to Perth.
Big fan of the show and big fan of Raja Bell on and off the court. Love your old school tough takes on everything. Hardest out here.
Hey, listen. Hey, not for nothing. Sorry. Give me a pause. Australians, I get down with Australians, though. They're built like that. Every Australian I know. From Delhi to I played with a dude named Brian Stiff in at Boston University. Like, all of them built the same way. Bogut, tough ass dudes, man.
All right. I have a question that I think relates to basketball and all life in today's day and age. Do you think younger players, this question's so for you, Raja. You just get in your bag, man. Warm up, stretch, yep, get it out. Do you think younger players worry too much about their image and in turn spend too much time on social media and worrying about things that don't help their on-court play?
Clear out, Howard. We're cleared out. Throw it to the wings, Raja.
My question also links into my own life as a father of 3. I worry about my kids and their time spent on social media and how that will influence their morals and choices. Raja and Howard specifically, my bad, Howard. I didn't think this was a lob to you as well. You absolutely fit into this category. Specifically, do you have a take on?
Meaning old?
I didn't say that. You said it. Do you have a take on this in your house as your own kids are growing in this new social media
Howard,
world?
Clear out,
Cheers
Howard.
For your
clear
content.
Howard.
Keep it up.
Yeah,
cheers, Mike.
Man, what direction to take this? Players on social media. Yeah, like, there's a way to be on social media without being in your mentions all the time, or be, without taking yourself down into those dark places that social media can take you, that would affect, anxiety levels and depression levels and stuff like that. So, hopefully guys navigate it better than I probably would have, because I just wasn't used to it. Like I didn't grow up in the world of it, right? So like I don't think I could have responsibly have navigated it as well as some of these guys do. As it relates to my house and my kids, it's interesting because we live in a world where you have to use it. Even if you are, a really, really good athlete, and that should speak for itself. We live in a world where there's got to be some sort of promotion of that. Like for instance, my older boy Dia, and I've subscribed to this with all of our kids. Like we don't give them social media accounts like really early, and then around 6th grade, like I'll collab on a social media account for them where, I'm monitoring all of the interactions and posts and things like that so that they can get like kind of training wheels. I don't know that this is the right way to do it, but this is just what my wife and I decided we do. And then as they get older and they get a little bit more responsible, they take over the social medias. But what I started to realize with Dia as the only recruit in my house right now is the amount of coaches that saw videos of him training that were posted prior to him actually playing. And if he wasn't posting those videos of himself working out, they would have never been alerted to his existence because he wasn't playing yet. And so there was value in that. And it kind of opened my eyes to like, okay, well, it has to be used responsibly, but it is a valuable tool. And so Ty, my middle boy, is now coming into the recruitable age, and having him be able to post things that are representing who he wants to put out there into the world as a young man and as a player. And those conversations are had, daily. And then what you're going to post in terms of a workout or a highlight tape that someone might make and stuff like that. So that as a young 8th grader that no one really knows about yet, it might catch an eye or two somewhere along the way. And now you're on someone's radar and map. So it's a really weird kind of intersection between sports and social media, and could be negative in some regards, but there's positives in it too. And trying to figure those out is what I'm living right now, man. So I don't know that I really answered it great, but that's the world that I'm in, trying to figure out how to responsibly use it and have the conversations with them about like, hey man, if X, Y, and Z didn't necessarily love your performance or love you in the way that you shot, who are they to you? On the flip side of that, if someone tells you you're a 5-star, the fuck does that really mean to you? Like, you still got to go out there and do the work, put the performances in, like put the grind into it. And that's all that really matters. Like all of that stuff up there is fluff. But understanding that it can be a vehicle to expose people to your kids and their talents is important too. Sorry, guys, that was a lot.
That was great. That was a long win. How much did Dia's recruitment educating how, or Dia's recruitment on social media educating how you help Ty now?
It's shaped it for sure. But on the flip side of that, basketball and football recruitment is completely different. So, they're different. Like I think basketball has more of its coaches on Instagram, and a lot of football is on Twitter. And so, I mean, we're experiencing this, and I'm learning real time, like how to do this. But, I think what Dia got really early in the process when I handed over his account to him, like, was the importance of not using that to put every thought that you harbor out into the Twitter sphere or the Instagram sphere. Like, that's what I would have struggled with. I've said this on this pod before, like having an emotion, heat of the moment, and being able to get on my phone and say some dumb shit that would live forever. Up until this point, they've been good about that. And I hopefully the conversations continue to help them in that regard.
That's what's up, man. Word to the wise. Don't tweet dumb shit that'll live forever. And that was another edition of Real Ones Motherfucking Mondays. Thank you, Kerm. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, Rajat. Thank you, Third Eye Kai. We are doing this every Monday and Friday throughout the playoffs. We'll see you guys on Friday. Enjoy the postseason this week. It is going to be a fun one. Talk to y'all soon. All the shits. Bye. Shout out Patty Mills.